addiction is a disease of choice. That's the problem here. What happens with addiction is if someone abuses that choice faculty,
Yes.
they keep choosing for like 30 years, they lose their faculty of choice. They're making a choice to drink. They hate the drink. I have not met one addicted person who's got a severe problem who likes this thing that they do.
Welcome to another episode of Life Expressions. I'm your host, Charie Ginete-Ilon, and today's conversation is truly special. We're talking about addiction, mental health, healing, trauma, resilience, but in a way that feels hopeful, compassionate, and deeply human. My guest today is someone who has not only treated people, but has built a place of healing, a center grounded in science, compassion, and humanity. He's the president and medical director of the Northeast Addiction and Mental Health Center for Holistic Recovery, Dr. Harbir Singh Gill. Dr. Gill, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. Sure.
Doctor, let's start with your beginnings because every powerful movement, every meaningful center begins with a story. What inspired you to start the Northeast Addiction and Mental Health Center for Holistic Recovery?
Yeah, as a physician, I think it's been calling me my whole life, this idea of service. I started getting hints of it in medical school when was volunteering at the homeless shelters and seeing some of the work one particular doctor in Ottawa, Dr. Turnbull. He was an internal medicine doctor and he built a homeless shelter out there. And I went and visited that, and it just occurred to me that, wow, he was he actually helped give these men their dignity back. And I thought to myself, yeah, I don't think, addiction, mental health is a big thing these days. Through all the trauma, all the things, people spiral, and at some point they lose their dignity, they lose their self-connection, they lose their connection with others, and they lose their spirituality, connection with higher power. So then, as a doctor, I've worked in pretty much most areas of medicine, rural, urban, I have a full spectrum family practice, addiction medicine, emergency medicine, hospital medicine, palliative care, and so when I looked, I also served as the chief of the hospital, the Peter Lougheed, which is one of the bigger hospitals in Calgary. And when I started just looking at all the challenges that we were seeing, it just kept on coming back to the same thing: mental health, addiction, in people, clients, patients, and their families. Just hurt people. And as a family doctor, I'm very proudly a family doctor, it occurred to me,
Yes.
you know, I went to medical school. I learned how to diagnose illness. I never really learned how to live, though. They don't teach that. How do you live? You learn how to, like, okay, if you have this criteria and this criteria, you have this disease, and, that's important. And then now
Yeah.
here's what we can do about it. That's important. But how do you live? How do you live so that you're in harmony with your universe and yourself and, prevent things, or deal with
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
holistically? So then I was thinking about that, and when I stepped away from the hospital, I wanted to be part of the solution. So I started doing addiction medicine and did my training and specialization in addiction medicine. And I started just, in my family practice office, treating people with addiction. And then doctors are quite evidence-based. And so I'm very evidence-based. So treatment's not going well. I think to myself, what can I do better? What can I learn? And so over time, we just learn more. I learned, I would run these groups for addicted people. I'd work with their families. I'd make lots of mistakes, and I would have treatment failure. And in addiction, treatment failure is catastrophic. It's death often. It's not when people die in addiction. It's when people fail treatment in addiction, the consequences are severe. So then, I would study my treatment failures. I would sort of look, why isn't this person getting better? And so that led me into the world of trauma. I
Yeah.
learned that trauma was a big part of this. And then I learned I myself have a lot of trauma that I haven't fully dealt with. And so then it led through, 15-year journey of sort of a 15, 20-year journey of just learning, healing, learning how to live. And then
Yes.
I realized this is useful information. So others can benefit from this. So then I subspecialized further in trauma therapy, various forms, 12-step programs. There's many, many modalities to treat addiction.
Yes.
And through all of the journey, what I learned is there's 5 areas of dysfunction that a person often has, and that sort of makes it hard for them to sort of heal. And one is like a lot of trauma, neglect, dissociation. The second is head injuries. Head injuries, people think you recover from head injuries, but you don't fully. Every head injury, that's why you can't have too many. Every head
Yes.
injury makes your emotional sort of bandwidth less. And we've had a lot of head injuries over our decades on this earth, right? You bump your head all the
Yes.
time, as a child especially. So
Yeah.
then people with addiction would often hit their heads or overdose and have hypoxic brain injuries. That's a driver of not success, not succeeding. Complex family dynamics.
Yes.
That's probably our most holistic thing. Addiction treatment success rates are pretty poor
Yeah.
generally. Like if as a treatment center,
Yes.
we have people in our treatment or in any treatment program, and they go out and they relapse often.
Yeah.
And uh, a lot of times, treatment, rehab, what is that? It's like a black box.
Yeah.
Most people just send them to rehab. What is rehab?
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the start, but then now I know because I run one, and it's just things like tell the truth, do your prayers, do your spirituality, connect to yourself, do journaling. It's just good mental health care. That's what rehab is. But the trouble is people exist. They don't exist alone in their minds, right? They exist as part of a collective of a family. And
Yes.
family of origin is a massive part of their mind. Good, bad, ugly, and great. Every family has its secrets.
Yeah. But
If
doctor,
if
I'm
you're asking,
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
just one last thing, since you're asking
Yes,
what the
yes.
origin of this, as a family doctor, I realized I don't know much about healing families. I know a lot about treating each member for the diseases. I know a lot about predicting what person needs what at what time. But how do you help a mother and a daughter reconcile? How do you help a father and a daughter, or a spouse, a husband and a wife? And I started studying that and then looking at that, and when you can help a little in that, the outcomes of people with addiction treatment goes really a lot better. So then that's where we start looking at that. And then last thing is spirituality. You can't do any of this without spirituality. You have to have a connection to some kind of higher power. Families are complex, people are complex. So then figuring all that out, that's how we got here. It's been a bit of a circuitous journey, but we're happy to be here.
Yeah. But how did you get there? Like, how did you build and start the center?
Yeah. So first I started in my office, and then I started running groups in my family practice office. And one day, some guy he was crying. He's having a moment of just like realization, and then my secretary just walks in and warms up her lunch. And I said to myself, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get a place. I gotta get this. I gotta get an office specific to addiction, where I can kind of control the environment because I worked in someone else's clinic. So then I originally just founded NOM.
Yeah.
Mainly just as a place where I can practice addiction medicine.
Yes.
And then as I saw people, they were saying, "Oh, we need weekly groups and stuff." So I started running those, and then some homeless people would keep showing up at the groups, and they would always show up. They would be there every week, but they'd
Yeah.
be homeless in between, and so obviously they wouldn't retain too much from the last group because they're like
Yeah.
homeless and they're struggling. So I thought, gotta house these folks, and then an opportunity came out, and then I just thought, stick them in a house. What could go wrong? Lots can go wrong. Housing is complex,
Yeah.
but then I just it just kind of worked. It's a higher power thing. It's a God thing. We're able to kind of just get as people need. So as you house people, you all of a sudden you're responsible for everything. So
Yes.
then you need to figure out programming. You need to figure out, one of the biggest issues in our society is that people don't want to deal with crisis. The crisis is looked in, certainly in the system, is looked as more of a nuisance, as something you have to deal with. So someone has to be on call 24/7. It's not the most popular thing in the world to be on call, to take those crisis phone calls. But we forget a very important thing is people build their trust mostly at that point of crisis. So whoever helps them in that moment, if you think about who do you trust, Cherie? You think about who do you trust in your life and why do you trust them? Inevitably, it's probably because they were there when you needed them, and that probably
Yes.
wasn't at a scheduled appointment 9 to 5. It was probably like 11 a.m., 11 p.m. at night, and someone you just needed to talk, and they were there, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So crisis, when you start housing people, you see their life. You see their 24 hours, 7 days a week, and then you have to have programming for that. You have to develop systems so that, if someone's suicidal in the middle of the night, you gotta do something with that, right? And what I learned
Yes.
though was when you're that provider that's doing that, you build trust. And when you build trust in the world of trauma treatment, trust is that ultimate resource that helps people have the courage to look at something they've never been able to look at.
Yes.
And so we build trust at Gnome. We build trust with people, with themselves, with others, with higher power. And as they do that, they're able to sort of broaden their circle of what they're willing to look at. They're able to deal with some pretty hard things. And then slowly it kind of grew, right? Then you need to have some place for these people to go during the day. Then you have a day program. And all these folks have families. So what do you do with the
Yes.
family? So holistic, I called it NOM Holistic Center, Center for Holistic Recovery, but I didn't know what that meant at the start. It just
Yes.
kind of became more and more holistic, and I was
Yeah.
just crazy enough to keep going with it because, that's just, I think God's will for me.
So, Dr. Gill, when you say holistic recovery, what does that really mean? What does that really look like?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Yes, lots of folks they call us and they're like, does holistic mean you prescribe medical marijuana and we can get up, smoke pot and get high and it's all great? Actually, holistic means biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. It means mind, body, and soul. It means people and their families, their family of origin, their family of circumstance. That's their family of circumstances like our people now. Family of
Yeah.
origin is biologically who we're related to, or who or people of who we originated from. Both are important. So
Yes.
holistic means building a relationship with yourself, even the parts of yourself you don't like, right? Holistic means building a relationship with others, people in your life, your family of origin, your friends, the people you've betrayed, the people who've betrayed you. You know, a lot of folks in this world, they say, oh, it happened, so it happened. We deal with a lot of immigrants at NOM. About 45% of our patients are Caucasian, about 45% are South Asian, and 10% are various ethnicities across the world. Um, we talk a lot about immigration trauma. Most immigrants are tough, They're like, I made it, But reality is immigration is tough. It's really
Yeah.
tough. It's traumatic, actually, if we're honest about it. You may not be aware of the trauma, but it is traumatic, and immigration messes up 3 generations, minimum, must.
Yeah.
And that is the parents of the immigrants themselves and their kids. It gives 3 generations a healing journey they need to walk, and if they don't walk, it's going to mess up the 4th generation and the 5th and the
Yeah.
6th. And that's a lot of what we see in our longer staying residents is this complex chain of generational trauma.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't think about it, but so since you're asking about holistic, right? Think about a tree.
Yes.
If I take the tree outside and I just pick it up, root it, and like plant it somewhere else, does it do well?
It will die. Yeah.
It'll need some help. It'll
It
need some
could.
care.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
statistically, yeah,
Exactly.
a lot of its leaves are gonna fall off.
Yeah.
It might,
Yes.
hopefully it'll live, but it's gonna need time.
Yes.
But what do immigrants do? They uproot everything and they move. And they don't just move once, they move once again and again and again until they find that place. But during that time, they're getting married, they're having kids, the trauma burden is growing and it's affecting their family back home and here. And so we don't talk about it. But when on the severe spectrum of addiction, we have to talk about it because these people are going to die
Yeah.
if we don't. And so then that's really been a big driver of this is the stakes are really high in addiction treatment. We gotta figure it out or people will die
Yeah.
and their families will mourn. And so a lot of this, I used to, my psychotherapist trainer, the one who trained me, he said to me, Dr. Gill, I haven't had much success with the Punjabi population. I was born and raised, I'm a second generation immigrant, so I know. I fall in that child category, a child of immigrants. He said to me, I haven't had much success with the Punjabi population. Maybe you should try. And I was like, okay. And I just thought, what could go wrong? Just translate everything in English that I know into Punjabi and let's just do it. And I very quickly learned it doesn't translate. Psychology of people in collectivist cultures like
Yes,
India or Philippines or Africa, collectivist villages raise children, right?
true. Yeah.
Extended families raise children. You can't just translate cognitive behavioral therapy models. You can't just, you have to, so I entered the world of psycho-spirituality. The vast majority of immigrants, non-English speakers, and there's a 25% of Alberta is non-English speaking. Where do all these people go for all their mental health and addiction issues? And I'll tell you where they
Yeah.
go. Most of them, they go to religion and they go to churches and they go to temples and the mandirs and mosques and there are their families, right? That's
Yes.
when there is no service, the vast majority of the human population across the world, they go to spirituality and these mechanisms to deal with that. And in the West, we don't really get involved that much in it, right? I didn't get any training in how do you help with that? I got 1 hour of training on addiction. I got 1 hour of PTSD, all related to medications and how to
Yeah.
diagnose it. The grow like through med school and residency. Everything else I had to seek out myself because
Yeah.
it's just not the focus. But psycho spirituality, holistic family structures, holistic food health, like detox diets and stuff. Like the
Yes.
West doesn't really talk about these things in the system, and yet diet is a really critical part of how we think. And so at NOM, we manage all sorts of these things to make it holistic. So you ask a really big question. What does holistic mean? It means a lot of stuff, and it doesn't mean everyone's
Yes.
iron pot. It means mind, body, and soul. But actually, it's sort of looking at what's blocking healing.
Yeah. I love that. Like you are addressing what's blocking healing. It's not just about medication, it's healing the total person, not just addressing the addiction, but all issues surrounding that person and the people that he interacts with. One thing people also misunderstand is the science behind addiction, Dr. Gill. They think it's a choice or a willpower issue, but what does the brain actually go through when you are addicted?
So I have to say addiction is probably overly simplified in general.
Yeah,
Behind most addiction, I find a lot of different things. Like I mentioned, the five things, right?
yeah,
Trauma, neglect, head injuries, complex family dynamics, spirituality related blocks, and numbing behavior,
yeah,
safety problems. So these are the five kind of things that contribute behind every addiction. We have to manage these things. And, why does a woman drink? Why does she drink gin and not vodka? Why does a man drink beer, not hard liquor? Why does someone go to marijuana? Why does someone go to crack, cocaine versus opioids? Why does someone go to opioids? Addicted people will tell you, yeah, I tried that, it didn't do anything, yet that same substance does something for someone else. There's very complex reasons for why this is.
yeah,
Generally, addiction is a disease of choice. That's the problem here. It is a disease. You
yeah,
can see it on brain scans. You can see the abnormal brain biology. We talked about the pickle. If someone does some addictive behavior long enough and they lose enough and they keep doing it, we talk about the pickle. So
yeah,
a cucumber, what is a pickle? A pickle is a cucumber. A cucumber, subjected to brine, salt water, that kind of thing, can become a pickle. But once it becomes a pickle, nothing wrong with a pickle. Pickles are tasty and useful, right? But pickles and cucumbers are different. A pickle can never go back to being a cucumber, right?
yeah, yes,
So what happens with addiction is if someone abuses that choice faculty,
yes,
they keep choosing for like 30 years, they lose their faculty of choice. Meaning, they're making a choice to drink. They hate the drink. I have not met one addicted person who's got a severe problem who likes this thing that they do.
yeah,
After they do it, they look at themselves in the mirror and they hate themselves. It's just, they may not tell their families that. They may sort of cover it in bravado. It's the reality. So and I'm talking drug dealers and like
yes,
they all hate it. They all hate what they do. They can't stop doing it. So it's a disease of choice.
Yeah.
And what that is it's like in medicine we talk about this thing called informed choice, informed consent, I should say. So if let's say I'm going to operate on you and do a procedure, it is my ethical duty as a doctor to explain to you the pros and the
Yes.
cons of that medical decision. What's going
Yes.
to happen if you don't do nothing? What's going to happen if you do something? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the risks? And like, yep, it was anesthesia. There's a risk of death. There's a risk of this. Yeah, it may not happen, 95%, but when my dad had heart surgery, they told me 5% chance he's not going to wake up out of this. I was like, whoa, it's a shock, but that's what they have to tell us so that if it ever happens, we can't go back and say, you know what, you never told me. So what happens with let's say someone says, hey, do the surgery. It's the best thing ever. No problem. And you go ahead and you do the surgery and you're not informed of everything.
Yeah.
You make a choice, right? People will say she could have not done the surgery, but she chose to do the surgery. But the
Yes.
trouble is you did not have the informed
Informed choice.
consent. So addiction, the people have a choice. Do I drink this or not? But their brain dysfunctions. It doesn't give them the adequate pros and cons
Yeah.
of the addiction, of the act. Weirdest thing happens, families get mad at their addicted husband, for example, who's in for a drunk driving incident. He's got a court case tomorrow, and all the charges could get dismissed if he just shows up sober and does what his lawyer tells him. So that night, what does he do? He drinks. He gets drunk. He doesn't show up for court, or he shows up drunk, and the judge is like, what are you, man? Like, what? And he slams him with a sentence, and his family's mad because now
Yeah.
he can't drive truck no more, and
Yeah.
now the family's in, and the family, they're mad. They're like, you chose that, right? But actually what happens is when stress happens, it takes that dysfunctioning brain and it hypercharges that dysfunction. So a person sees a choice, but they don't see the consequences that are going to come. So
Correct.
one of the skills we teach addicted folks is play the tape forward. This is from Alcoholics Anonymous. They say, if you're feeling a craving, play the tape forward. So that what does that mean? That means if I do this, what's going to happen then? Oh, if I have one drink, I'll probably have another. Okay, then what's going to happen next? I'm going to have another, and another, and another, and then I'm going to be drunk. And then I'm going to have trouble getting home, and then I'm going to go home, and then my wife's going to fight with me, and then I'm not going to sleep, and then tomorrow my son's going to get up, he's going to be mad, and oh, I don't want to take the drink. They play it forward. But people without addiction, they kind of automatically do this, right?
Yes. Yes.
But in addiction, they lose that. They see it and they just kaleidoscope. They don't see anything, like a tunnel. In a
Yeah.
tunnel, dark tunnel, all you see is the light at the end. You don't see
Yes.
anything else, right? And so that's why it's a disease of choice. In a tunnel, you can only go one direction, forward, that way. There's no other way to go. You don't know what. But the reality is, at any given moment, we have many choices we could make.
Yeah.
We could make choice A. We could say, drink tomorrow. We could say, I'm not going to drink. We could say, call my wife. I could say, I'm going to go exercise. But in that moment, stress, this is why we call it a stress-induced defect of the brain. Stress kaleidoscopes my choices into one. And
Yes.
then it just seems to make sense. Logically, I'm just going to go forward. And I'm going to tell myself, I'll just have one drink. And then they have another, and then it starts, right?
Yes.
So basically, that's the disease of addiction. It's a disease of choice. And that's what's so crushing and difficult for families, because through recovery, we can restore.
Yes.
Holistic recovery restores the choice, brings stress down, prevent stress, learn to manage stress, and recognize when you are stressed.
Yeah.
When an addicted person and their families learn to do this as a team, the wife could say to the husband, hey, you know what, you look a little stressed. And the husband's like, I'm not stressed. She's like, no, I think you're stressed. Are you having a craving right now? Because addicted people, they're used to getting yelled at, right? And they're like,
Yeah.
keep it a secret because wife's going to yell. But if the wife were to say, hey, hubby, I'm with you. I know you might be having a craving, but you know what? Let's go do something. Let's go have some ice cream or something.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, one person's burden becomes a family's burden. You're asking what holistic looks like.
Yes. Yes.
It means mind, body, soul. It means people. It means learning to build these connections with people you trust. Addicted folks have very little trust in anybody. So then building that trust step by step. And some people, they need inpatient care to do that. Some people need a day program to do that. Some people can manage that with therapy. Some people can manage that with their family doctor. Some people can just go to their priest. But no matter what it is, managing the stress restores the choice. And then truly becomes a choice. But once someone gets so stressed, like the court case tomorrow, it's not really a real choice. It's just it's a foregone conclusion. But everyone else who's not in that brain, it looks like a choice, and that's why it's so frustrating. That's why families get torn apart over this, and that's what the science is.
I love that. I learned so much. And I like the way you said that when recovery is there, there is now the choice. Like you have the power of choice. You can go back. But you've walked beside so many people, Dr. Gill, who rebuilt their lives and recovered. Without sharing identities, is there a patient story that reminds you why you do this? It is a long journey.
Hmm. Yeah. You know what? There's not one. There's many.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a saying. A saint said this. I don't believe in miracles. I depend upon them. In this line of work, a very special group of people can do this kind of work. A treatment center. I read an article, 23 easy steps to open addiction treatment center. Yeah, nothing particularly easy about it, I'm gonna say. But when people are dysfunctioning in their choice faculties and their families, it's a
Yeah.
mess. A lot of the time, containing that, supporting that requires a lot of patience. It requires a strong team. It requires, honestly, God's grace. There ain't
Yes.
no other way to do it, right? So uh, then you see miracle every day. So you see the most broken families all of a sudden start to talk. Couples that have been married for 60 years and lived with addiction, and who are just miserable, and their kids are miserable, and their grandkids are miserable, and everyone's miserable. But then that elderly person wakes up and then all of a sudden heals starts that healing of that generational trauma and the effect it has on their kids, on their spouses. You see, we're not in isolation from each other, right? So,
Yes.
moms know this, right? Mom always knows. There's a saying, moms have eyes on the back of their head. Kids think how do you know, mom? How do you know when I'm not doing well? Or because mom and child are linked. And they're
Yes.
linked for life. It doesn't end at once they leave the nest or they get married. Moms and children are linked forever. And so are dads, so families are linked. They're connected, even if they live in different countries.
Yes.
And that miracle of family structures, when an addicted person, right? So like we know that no one can stress a wife out as much as her husband. No one can support a wife as much as her husband, and no one
Yeah.
can support a husband as much as his wife, and no one can stress him out as much as his wife. I'm not
True.
sure what that's about, but most
Yeah.
people, when they hear that, they're like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it just seems to be true. So then what happens when a husband enters recovery? They're fixing stuff. What happens when even outside their wife starts to fix stuff, and then their wife starts to fix things with the kid, and all of a sudden in a couple of weeks you have a transformed family dynamic where people talk about feelings and love and give hugs and stuff, whereas before it was kind of all just walking on eggshells and that happens at a high frequency, not
Yes.
100% frequency, but that's addictive, I'll tell you. Like, being part of that is addictive. I love it.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
seeing people, I will say one thing. One guy hadn't picked up a Bible. He had religious trauma growing up, right? And he hadn't picked up a
Yes.
Bible since he was a kid. And, he just kind of came and he just started reading the Bible. And then, like, hardcore homeless on the streets, and then probably a bit of a kingpin, like, smart guy.
Yeah.
And to see him kind of go and put his life back together, and it's just started with treatment, but then no treatment provider. Certainly, I won't say that like I control someone's healing. At NOM we have a saying: journeys start long before NOM, and they end
Yes.
long after NOM. We're
Yes.
just a course correction, And for this fellow, he came and he just for whatever reason he just picked up the Bible and started. It was the time,
Yes.
and then all sorts of healing happened, and just watching that, or in like it's common Sikhs. They come, right? Sikh religious people. It's a large demographic in Calgary, South Asian, and so then we call our religious text like in a book, a small book, a gutka. And some of
Yeah.
these guys, their hands are shaking. They don't go to
Yeah.
well, they don't go anywhere because they're so ashamed of what they do and how they are. And so then he's like picking this book up and he's like shaking because he's never touched it because he's so scared of it. And then by the end, he's like reading, and by the end, he's kind of enjoying himself, and his family sits and does the prayers together. And it's these kinds of things that family, it's not complicated, right? And
Yeah.
yet it's so complicated. And I can tell you, having worked in all sorts of areas of medicine, family healing is one of those things. If you think about your family, it's complex. No one wants to get into it, but it's not so complex. It's usually just resentment and negativity. And I'll tell you another miracle. I'll tell you another
Yes. Yes, please.
mom and dad. So mom and dad, when mom and dad fight, and many kids, they've seen their moms and dads fight. And oftentimes moms and dads are not really aware of the effect of that fight in the mind of that child that's watching. Children, they're great observers, they're poor interpreters. They need someone else to make sense of things. Otherwise, they make the wrong conclusion most of the time. And parents are the opposite. They're really good interpreters. They can make sense of stuff, but they don't see too much. They're poor observers because their brains aren't growing that same way. Kids, they're like sponges. They're just soaking up knowledge. But the end result of that is that kids see conflict and it knots up their mind like a big knot.
Yeah.
And one of the things we do in our family program is we help parents. Parents don't think these fights are necessarily a big deal. Sometimes big messy divorces and stuff, but in all these cases, if the parents become willing to let a little bit of their parental resentment go, maybe they don't even know they have it. But the thing is that magnifies millions of folds into the mind of the child. And when they do that, that child starts to think more freely. That child, even if that child's an adult
Yeah.
living in an inpatient treatment center, we see the change. We see how they open up and they sort of all of a sudden they're like they connect better with their higher power. A lot of like spirituality related blocks come from this simple trauma stuff. It's like mom and dad are unreliable or jerks or mean or I ask them for help, they don't give me help, right? And that happens enough times. From a child's perspective, who is God? Who is higher power? For the first couple of years, it's mom. Mom gives the food, mom gives the protection, mom gives everything, right? But then what happens if mom's not perfect? What a child does is a child learns and they generalize all that information to all things of power. So then they learn about a higher power. Okay, it must be like mom, subconsciously. And then I can't trust mom. Okay, I can't trust God either. And so then these trust blocks start to build and get reinforced with every negative occurrence. And one of the magical things that happens when a family, when husband and wife, they kind of release some of their resentment. Many people are unhappily married, right? They're married, but they're unhappily married and just kind of stay together for the kids. But what happens when they release a bit of that resentment?
Yeah.
The mind of the child actually releases a lot. It's not a big deal for the parents, nearly as much as of a big deal it is for the kids. And to see that happen in real time is just like, oh, yeah,
Wow.
that's why I
Yes.
do this. I love this. And it,
Yes, I love it.
and so then that of course, that then what happens in that child is, oh, maybe I was wrong about mom. Then the next thing is maybe I was wrong about God. Maybe I was wrong about spirituality. Maybe I'm willing to give this a try. Maybe I'm willing to read the Bible again. Maybe I'm willing to sort of forgive some of this stuff. So that's a miracle unto itself, right? And there's ways to do that. But I just why do I do this? Is because I love what I do. I love seeing these miracles, and from my perspective, this is science. This
Yeah,
is trauma healing. This is family therapy. This is the things that we do. But when you approach it in a holistic sort of a thing that includes spirituality, people are willing to do it. Everybody wants to be at peace. Everyone wants, but how do you get there?
I
We can't help
agree.
everyone, but we try our best.
Yeah. And I would definitely say that when you help a person recover, you help the whole family and the community. It's not just about one person, it's about the family and the community. And they together they can rediscover the beauty of life. But Dr. Gill, for sure, families sometimes feel helpless when they have someone in the family who is addicted and who's alcoholic or into drugs, etc. They want to support, but they don't always know how.
Yeah.
And what advice would you give to families listening right now?
So this is great, right? The one of the so it's a disease of choice. Anybody who's known an addicted person, it is not pretty, right? Once they're recovered and they're learned and this and that and so it's lovely and everyone likes to publish news stories about it. But what about the 20 years of misery
Yeah,
leading up to that? It's
yeah,
not pretty, right? And so there's a lot of time in that time period. It's a disease of choice. Addicted people have very poor insight. They don't think they have a problem. If I had a nickel every time that a family member came into my office and said, "I see they have a problem, but they don't think they have a problem," I'd be very rich because that's the natural history. People don't come all of a sudden develop an addiction. They come here. It's
yeah,
been going on for decades, and then they come here. So, so a lot of families struggle with what you're saying. Like, what do you do? And they think there's nothing to do other than just to wait and to just become hopeless. A lot of families, they build up a defense mechanism that I call hopelessness. Hopelessness doesn't sound pleasant, but when you're chronically suffering, the nice thing about hopelessness is it is predictable. You don't expect anything different, and then you're not disappointed, right? If you expect you're going to get a car tomorrow, and you don't get a car tomorrow, you're sad, right? If you think
yeah,
you're gonna get the job and then you don't get the job, you're sad. But if you think, I'm never gonna get that job, I'm just like, this is just, I'm here to suffer and life is how it is. And you apply for the job, you don't think you're gonna get it, then you don't get it. You don't have that high and low, okay?
yeah,
That's what I call hopelessness, and that's a defense mechanism. Not a bad one. It helps people go through long periods of suffering. Unfortunately, it makes people very, very pessimistic that something better is possible. And so then along comes someone like me, or it's not just me. There's millions of healing type opportunities available to us at any given time if we just look
yeah,
at it. Yes, but someone like me comes along and says, "Hey, there's hope." I used to run family programs, and families would be like, I didn't get good uptake. Family programming is one of the hardest programs because families, they are often hopeless. They are
yeah,
often, and so what can they do? And the good news is, there's many things. They can do many things. The biggest thing about uh, helping a person with addiction is you need to build readiness for change. So people with addiction, they build everybody, families, you have to build readiness for change, and then you can undertake the change action. That could be going to a course, getting a therapist, going to your priest, praying, whatever. But you need to get ready to do that, and then you do that. One person in our treatment program, he got ready 6 months before he called us. He was getting himself
yeah,
ready, and getting himself ready, and then he came. He almost left, but then he stayed. And now and readiness. So families are the same way. When someone is not seeing the effect of their problem on themselves, we
yeah,
have to help them get ready to see that. And how can we do that? First off, we have to build our own connection uh, um, to ourselves, to our
yeah,
others, and to our higher power. We need to build that readiness. That's going to give us patience for what will be a very long process. Addiction does not go away immediately. It takes months and years, right, to kind of adequately treat it. Many failed attempts before a successful attempt. How many times have I tried to lose weight? Many times. How many times have I tried to start exercising only to stop? Many times. It's no different with addiction. They start, they stop, they start, except there, when they stop, it's catastrophic. It rips everything apart. Whereas if I
Yeah.
eat a bag of chips, no one cares. So it's much more ups and downs, but a family, they need to start to resource themselves and building a simple practice to do so, to build patience. We give them affirmations that are based in a program called Al-Anon. That's the sister program of AA. And that can help them just be patient and see, okay, you know what? Everything's happening for a reason. I'm here. I want to support my loved one. I want to learn some principles how to do that. And then that readiness can build. Every religion, every system, every spirituality has systems for building energy, like tapping, breathing. There's yoga, there's millions of Tai Chi, and there's millions of practices to kind of build. But what will happen for a family member is they can start building those practices. And then what's going to happen is they will have the idea that maybe they need to set some boundaries. I'll tell you, no addicted person ever came to my center voluntarily. I would say very rarely. Very rarely will an addicted person come to my center and say, "Hey, Dr. Gill, I just want to better myself. I want to check into treatment." No. Most of the time is because they went to jail. They got a court case. Or their wife kicked them out. Or their family had enough of them. Or they had a near-death experience at the hospital. Or they were homeless in the shelter. Or they lost their truck license and they have to do a course. These are the real reasons why someone comes into treatment. Very uncommonly does someone
Yeah.
just like want to better themselves. So the just for that, right? So families can play a big part in that, drawing boundaries, not enabling. We call it soft love and tough love. Most
Yeah.
families are unbalanced one way or the other. Some are just like total enablers and they just, hubby drinks and cause a problem at night and is kind of like, and then the next morning they're like, oh, and can I get you some tea? And they're pampering him and just to kind of keep the peace, he doesn't feel the consequence of his actions. So why would he change? So that's why it takes 20 years and often things. But what happens if a family starts to take some actions like, hey, no, or a son, a lot of the families, they have like a son who's doing drugs and stuff and is gone for 5 days or 4 days at a time and boundaries.
Yes.
Why will that person take help? You know what? You can't use drugs in my house. And if you do, I'm going to call the police. A lot of folks, they come to us after the police get involved and they're mad at their families. They're like, why did you call the police? But if it's done out of love, because the reality is addiction is a deadly disease. So
Yeah.
if we keep allowing it to go, the chance of death is quite high. If we intervene and say, let's say a wife puts her husband out on the street, yes, he might die. Absolutely. But if he keeps doing what he's doing, he might lose his family, lose everything. The relationship becomes so burnt out that there's
Yeah.
no going back. It's better, perhaps, while the love is still there, to exercise tough love. And tough love is still love. It's not reaction. It's not like, I'm mad at you, I'm going to kick you out, but I'm still going to be really kind of like, it's hubby, I love you. I don't want to lose my love for you, but this has to change or we need to take a break here.
Yeah.
You figure out what you want to do. And then that kind of hard reality check, a trucker losing their license, hard reality check. For the first 2 weeks, they hate treatment, and then after that, they start to like these things. Like, I can actually relax my mind without drugs.
Yeah.
Because they never saw another way, right? They're tunneled,
Yeah.
and so in treatment, we just show them multiple ways they can sort of be. So that journey can take time. There's groups like
Yes.
Al-Anon.
Yeah.
Al-Anon's a great group for families. That sort of has other family members who are struggling. And then there's AA, 12-step groups for people with addiction. Going to these kinds of groups, going to the addiction counselors, just anything you try to do, like I said earlier, right? If a mom and a dad have a son who's addicted, one of the best things they can do is work out their conflict because they always
Yeah.
have something.
Yeah.
they're hearing it from me that it makes a profound difference in that mind of that child, more than 10,000 hours of therapy would. And so that's a very good use of time. And a lot of times families don't understand that interlinkedness. So if
Yeah.
they work on something in themselves and resolve it, it seems to resolve it for everybody. And so it's worth it, right? It's worth it to deal with the problem at hand. No one wants to work on old conflicts that they've buried,
Yes.
but if they do, benefit may be quite real. So a lot of these practices, right,
Yes.
can be very helpful at restoring that balance of soft love and tough love. But it's still love. So, like, if I tell if a wife, if she's gonna kick her husband out, it's like, "I love you, honey. We'll see you when you get better," as opposed to, "I hate you, out of here." Ah." That's the wrong way to shut the door because that's gonna rebound back and regret and remorse. But if you take an action, it's like, or nowadays, a lot of kids are addicted to like internet and video games, right? But
Yeah.
like, if a mom is like, "Honey, I love you. I'm gonna shut off your internet now for a month so you can learn other ways to cope." The kid's gonna be mad, but if it's done with love, it is very therapeutic for that child. If it's done out of anger, it just reinforces all that trust block that
Yeah.
they have, right? So it's not so much about the action, it's about the what's behind that action. What's the motivation? Is it love or is it reaction and frustration and, anger?
Yeah.
That's gonna make the same action,
Yeah.
closing the door, turning off the internet. One's going to, if it's done with love, it's healing, it's gonna move the person forward in their journey. If it's
True.
done out of anger and reaction, it's gonna put the person back in their journey. It's gonna wind this up even tighter.
Yes.
So there's lots families can do. That's why we have a family program, and
Yeah.
they often don't know that they can do it. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, it does. Definitely. Dr. Gill, if someone listening is struggling or loves someone who is, what
Yes.
is your message to them? What can they do today?
I'll tell you. Have hope. Okay. Store the hope. There is hope. At our center, our old stats, we're getting our new stats, but when we followed up our addicted folks, 55% of them were sober. Severe addiction, they came in. 55% were sober after a year. People can get better, even if they've been doing the same thing for 30 years. They can get better. It may take multiple steps. The
Yeah.
average, some people, they have to go to treatment 8 times on average, 3 or 4 times. Not one time. That's uncommon. Because what happens is when we have addiction, it's a disease of choice. So how do you restore choice? By giving choice. So people after treatment will often relapse. That's not necessarily, it's not a great thing, but it is a thing.
Yes.
But then it leads to more choices. You know, sometimes the social network from the first treatment attempt is the one that gets a person sober on the sixth treatment attempt. Treatment adds to itself. So every attempt, every therapy, every visit to the mosque or the gurdwara or the church, every healing attempt, right, adds to this. And every addicted person has an invisible line, and we don't know where it is, but it's there. And if they
Yeah.
can just hit that, they're going to be fine. A person in sustained recovery is the best person. I'd hire that person for a job, reliable, wonderful human beings. There is nothing better than a person in sustained recovery. And everyone has that potential and that invisible line, but it's a disease of lies, right? I tell the husbands, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's sunk Nixon's presidency? It wasn't the Watergate scandal, or it wasn't the original problem. It was the cover-up. And
True.
and 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 so it's not the relapse that the family's mad at. It's all the lies around it. Like,
Yes.
why didn't you just tell me? Why'd you lie that you were out with your friends when you were actually out at the bar? Why didn't you just tell me the truth? But you have to understand, it is the disease of lies. It requires patience, and that addicted person does not have the ability to to handle your frustration. So you got to find other ways. You got to pray. You got to go to therapy. You got to do some other stuff because it's going to take that person time.
Yes.
But as long as they're engaging in treatment of some kind, they're building, and that is an invisible line. If they don't work, just keep going because eventually they'll hit that line and you'll have the best human being. And it's worth it.
That's wonderful. I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Gill. How can they reach you and how can they avail of your service in Calgary?
Yeah, so our services are available to people who are in Alberta primarily. That's sort of I think your Vancouver audience, right? Or is
Yes,
it?
yes,
Yeah. But you know what? We have a YouTube channel. It's Nom
yes.
Recovery. It's called Nom Recovery. There's about 200 plus videos in there, English and Punjabi. And it has a lot of material for families and for patients and for clients. But just general ideas of how do you heal, how stress and all these simple things. And folks, I wish I could offer like a BC Healthline, but we're growing our capacity and stuff. So then we want to be able to help, and we want to equip other centers and to provide that because I know BC is struggling just as Alberta is.
Yeah.
But I'd say the if they wanna they're welcome to email us at our email on our website www.notrecovery.com. If they have queries or something, we're happy to sort of. And I think our number is 587-777-4722, and we're happy to if there's some situations where we while we can't provide our services entirely unless they're in Alberta, we can I encourage everyone to just learn some stuff about addiction because when you're in it, you're as tunnel visioned as the person. And so then you need to learn. And so there's lots to learn and there's lots of ways to learn. And there's, so that's, and they can, of course, email me.
Yes.
Well, hskill at nomrecovery.com. I'm
Yeah.
happy to take some emails as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Gill. Know that this podcast is broadcast worldwide, so you can be heard not just in Vancouver, but of course also in Alberta.
Yes,
And thank you so much for sharing your story, your heart, and the fact that there is hope. Healing is possible. Thank you so much. And yes, recovery is real, not just for one person, but for the whole family, because it's not just the problem of one person. I love how you said that when they heal, because addiction is a disease of choice, you restore choice. Yes.
yes.
Thank you so
There's
much.
there's a great video also, Pleasure Unwoven. It's called Pleasure Unwoven. It's by an emergency room doctor in Calgary. Oh, sorry, in the States, but they made a video,
Yes.
an hour-long documentary, brilliant, on that topic of choice. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me, Sherry. I appreciate the work you do and the work that it's important to get this stuff out there.
It's my pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. And yes, there's so much hope waiting for you. Thank you so much for joining Life Expressions today and, of course, listening to us. Until next time, don't forget, take care of your mind, your body, your heart, and your soul. Dr. Harbir Singh Gill, thank you so much.
Thank you.